Thank you for making me cry. Jessica Hagedorn, another big name in Philippine American literature, is a novelist, poet, and playwright. She was born and raised in the Philippines and moved to the US in her teens. Her books include the novels Dog Eaters, a finalist for the National Book Award, and the recipient of an American Book Award. I remember when that first came out, just looking at Dog Eaters, I didn't even realize that it was by a Filipino, and I didn't even connect that Dog Eaters. Dog Eaters like from the Philippines? Dog Eaters? Yeah. I actually had an experience eating dog when I was a young boy in the Philippines. My parents, my father and his buddies came home one day, and yeah, I had a lot of dogs. And so that evening they told me, you know, hey, this is caldereta, it's really good. Tikman mo, naimas na ita. Okay. So I said, I was quite, I said, okay. Well, is it good? It's like, yeah, naimas papa, it's good. It tastes good. It's like, that was your dog. Okay. Also, The Gangster of Love, Dream Jungle, a New York Times notable book, and Toxicology, which was published last year. Ms. Hagedorn was the editor of the Asian American fiction anthology, Charlie Chan is Dead. She lives in New York City. This evening, we have the wonderful Joi Barrios reading Ghost Town. Dr. Joi Barrios is a lecturer at UC Berkeley. She's the author of 6 books, including the poetry collection Bulaklak sa Tubig, Mga Tula ng Pag-ibig at Himagsik, and Tagalog for Beginners. As an actress, she has worked in the University of the Philippines Repertory Company, PETA, and the Cultural Center of the Philippines, Tanghalang Filipino. She has received 14 national literary awards in Manila, and for her contributions to literature was among the 100 women chosen as weavers of history for the Philippine Centennial Celebration. Please welcome Joi Barrios.
Magandang gabi po. So, I'm reading Ghost Town, and it's about Jessica's homecoming to Manila, and also this parties they have in New York. And I realized as I was reading the text, oh my God, I just tasted that adobo in January. So, here's to the memory of the adobo and the humba and everything else. So, I'm reading 2 short excerpts. Text 1. Being in Manila is like being in a constant coke high, or in the grip of a fever. You find yourself exhausted yet stimulated, eager for the next shocking encounter. Street kids run in packs, sniff glue openly, beg for change. A homeless family takes a siesta in the hollow of a giant banyan tree. Broken strips of pavement with weeds sprouting through the cracks run alongside streets. Sidewalks are still a rarity. So many people coming and going, you can't afford to lollygag or daydream. There are sudden jolts of beauty amid all this dizzying chaos. A lone girl, possibly insane and quite beautiful, with a gone look in her eyes, walks lightly into traffic. She's barefoot, dressed in a grubby, oversized t-shirt. She rubs her tummy, blissful. I stay rooted to my sliver of concrete, transfixed by the sight of her. Crazy girl sucks on Milo, one of those sugary snack drinks that come in foil with a little straw. The foil is flat. Crazy girl has sucked it dry. But she's oblivious. Sucking on air with a smile on her pretty face. How old is she? 10, 16, 29? As jeepneys, buses, and cars careen and swerve around her, crazy girl floats high above the traffic and disappears, indifferent and serene. Random signs, what we love about Manila. Barber shop, Edgar Scissorhands. Tailor shop, Elizabeth Taylor, ring. Seafood stand, fish be with you. Fast food joint, not so fast. Dance club, 6 o'clock. Florist shop, petal attraction. second part. I returned to Manila in an odd state of elation. It's time to visit the old house. Zach, Ching, and I take a taxi to Old Santa Mesa. The one spacious street is steaming, not 1 inch free of bodies, dogs, jeepneys, buses, cars, trucks, taxis. My God, there's the Caltech station and the church, still a modest, unassuming place of worship, but newly painted. There it is, I point excitedly, 4461 Old Santa Mesa Street. A high wall surrounds it now. You can't see it. A security guard mans the gate. Let's go in, my friends urge me. I hesitate, scared by what we might find. Zach tells the security guard that I've come all the way from the States just to see the house where I grew up in. The guard looks unimpressed, but shrugs and waves us in. Our taxi driver is a wizened old man, amused and entertained by my drama. He puffs on a cigarette and keeps the engine running as I warily step out and look around. Of course, nothing is as I remember it. The original house has been torn down and replaced by some sort of Lutheran school or institution. The fragrant calachuchi tree is the only thing I recognize, gnarled and, to my astonishment, still flowering. Maybe it isn't even the same tree. The overgrown jungle that had once been my garden has been razed and flattened. There's an ugly patch of concrete where the grass used to grow. Some kind of basketball court? I'm not sure. People inside the bungalow-type buildings that are now on the property, classrooms perhaps, glance out the windows and smile at me. I smile back, exhausted at everything, eager to get back to New York and finish my novel. Paloma, the elder of my 2 daughters, one day took note of the colorful and cluttered interior of our Manhattan apartment and wisely observed, "Ma, we live in a crazy people's museum." The walls are busy, hung with my mother's paintings, my collection of Madonna, Santos, and crucifixes. The shelves are cluttered with books, photos, and mementos from my childhood and travels in the Philippines. Everywhere she turned, Paloma was confronted by altars for the dead, by images of family buried in a distant land called the Philippines. In one of the many photographs I found in my mother's trunk after she died, my youthful mother smiles gaily at the camera. She holds a cigarette in one hand, looking very much the wannabe movie star in her slinky beaded evening gown. It is a hand-tinted photograph from a more carefree time in post-war Manila. My mother looks confident and beautiful. In another photograph I cherish, my father smiles at the camera with a bemused expression. My head rests on his shoulder and my eyes are closed. I have had too much to drink and I am pretending to be asleep. It is my despedida party. Paloma and I are flying back to New York in the morning. She's 4 years old at that time and hangs on to my arm with a mischievous smirk. I look happy in the photograph. We all do. Happy. Yet we are actually a little sad. My father appears fit, but is slowly dying of cancer. It is 1988. The last time I will see him alive. He dies in Manila 2 years later. By then, I am pregnant with Esther, my other daughter, and unable to travel. I was not there either when my mother died, alone in a hospital in San Francisco, nor was I there when my middle brother died from complications brought on by a stroke on his way to a provincial hospital on the outskirts of Manila. During Filipino therapy, it often boils down to a language game. My expat friends and I shout out words and phrases in Tagalog, Ilocano, Visayan, or whatever other regional dialect we might have grown up speaking. We curse. To speak the language with such loud abandon is a joyful exercise in remembering. We laugh at the absurdity of sitting around in some Manhattan apartment shouting, "Walang hiya!" or "Kaliwa, kanan!" for no reason at all. No shame, left, right. We feel no shame. The words may sound like playful nonsense to most people, but are bittersweet music to our ears. I still dream about the old house from time to time, but it is no longer a solitary house on a desolate island. I find myself, present-day Jessica, wandering inside the house and marveling that the rooms are no longer the haunted rooms of my childhood, but something more mundane and ordinary. The narrow claustrophobic kitchen in my New York apartment, or maybe the post office I'd visited earlier that day. But some ghosts will never be laid to rest, and my memory is still jogged by the most unexpected things. The perfume of rotting flowers, the taste of salt, plaintive Cuban love songs, wistful cha-chas, silvery condiments on a guitar. It never fails. That ruin of a house once again looms large before me. The ghosts stare, and I begin to write. Maraming salamat po.